Hi, good morning, and welcome to the Habit Architect. I'm Michael Cups, your host, and I'm really excited about today's guest because it's impacting all of our lives in one way or the other. We're hearing about it. We may be customers, and I was a customer of the gentleman that's going to join us in just a minute. It's impacting a lot of lives in a positive way. Very a unique opportunity that commercially is challenging, right? There's big pharma out there that are trying to monopolize the area of drugs in the U.S. at least. And rarely do you find companies that get started by somebody with passion for something because he found a problem in the marketplace. He became passionate about it and launched a company that really has changed many lives. I think in the neighborhood of 90,000 lives. So I'm excited about this. We're going to talk about GLP-1s today. So you may have heard of Mounjaro or Ozempic or Wegovy or any of those things. Those are the brand names. And Chris is going to talk about how he's actually brought affordability and access to a population that was having challenges to get access to those medications. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, I just want to remind you, go to timebandit.io and check out all of our education, our mobile app, the book, etc. Again, that's timebandit.io. And I do want to encourage everybody to ask questions. Let's go ahead and bring Chris on from backstage online. While I'm doing that, if you're watching on Spotify or your YouTube, whatever, do subscribe and like and ask questions live today if you get a chance. Hello, Chris. Good to see you.
Hey, Michael. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So good. I've been wanting to do this for some time because this topic is, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it is everywhere, right? When it first came out, when GLP-1s first came out, there was some polarization around it, and the righteous people that sit in the fitness rooms all the day, that, they had an opinion, doctors had an opinion and everything, but it's changing people's lives. That's the flat out fact. So I want to talk about all that today, the habits that go with it. But first, why don't you introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Chris Beers. Founded OrderlyMeds in 2023, October of 2023. But my background is not in healthcare. My background is software development and consulting. So my previous 20 years were nowhere near the healthcare space.
Yeah. And that's where I met you too. We actually had I think we were partners at some point in the journey. So it's fascinating to me to see a pivot like that. And it's obvious that you're passionate about this too. I think maybe we start with your founder story. You found yourself in a situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to rewind the tape one additional year. So we'll go back to 2022. And I find myself in the ICU, the doctor's yelling at me about having to transfuse blood, and I get to spend 5 days there. Coming out, and totally unrelated to weight, unfortunately, but that's a much longer story. But coming out of that, my primary care physician said, Chris, you could stand to lose 20, 30 pounds. It would help with your overall recovery and kind of what you're dealing with. And she wrote me a prescription for Wegovy. And so I sat on this and I took it to Publix, and Publix said, yeah, insurance isn't going to cover that. And even if you wanted to pay cash, we have not had that in stock for months. Right. So good news is Facebook, doing Facebook's thing, starts to stalk me and put ads in front of me for alternative sources for these types of medications. And that led me to start to explore what is compounding, how come telemedicine is able to do this, kind of the framework that allowed this to happen online. It took me almost 6 months to get comfortable ordering, right? So my event was in October of 2022. I didn't order my first GLP-1 online until August of 23. So medication starts showing, and that was research and fear and what was out there in the market. And, there was not nearly the talk track that is GLP-1s, that there is today, 3 years ago. So get on the medication, lose weight super fast. It's great. I didn't have the symptoms. So it was a great experience for me from like a medication perspective. But my background, 20 years in customer experience and software development, I was like, this is the worst digital experience I've ever had, right? Like the clunkiness of the site, the way that they engaged with you from a community perspective and kind of walked you through the journey of doing this medication, which shows up in a vial and a needle, which is not a thing I've ever done before. And you're just kind of left to figure it out.
Yeah.
So by October, I'm wandering around complaining about how much I didn't like this experience. And, my friends and family are like, Chris, you know a thing or two about this. If you want to do something about it, do something about it.
Right.
So I went to my college roommate, previous business partner, and I said, hey, I think there's something here. I think we can create a much better experience. And the theme wasn't just a better digital experience. It was right in line with what you're talking about. It was the habits that have to wrap all the way around this, right? Like weight loss is not just a medical journey. It is a mental journey. It's a fitness journey. It's a nutritional journey. And you've got to change habits while you use the medication so you can come out the other side in a better place. So, you know, he eventually got on board. We spent October and November of 23 building the OrderlyMeds platform, V1. We launched January of 2024, and we ended that month with 17 customers. And we thought, oh goodness, we have wasted a ton of time and energy, because if you can only get 17 customers on a weight loss platform in New Year's, right, resolution timeline, you're probably doing something wrong. We grounded out, we stuck with it. Things really started to change for us March, April. We ended 2025 with 110,000 patients.
Wow. Wow, that's
so
fantastic.
it has been a tremendous journey. Our community is filled with stories of people that have lost 20, 30, 100 pounds, right? I think our collective weight loss is north of 2.5 million pounds, right, as a community. So that's a transformational amount of weight, right? And the theme that we went with, you know, because I think, you know, I aligned with my personal journey. It was a story of how do you get more usable life out of your second half.
Yes.
Right. Like
yes.
we all crush ourselves for the first 40 or 50 years. And then we get to retirement mode and we're not actually able to enjoy it.
Right.
So how do we make sure that we can get there and enjoy that? And I'll tell you, one customer, close friend of mine, helped me get my first job out of college, first customer on the platform. He told me a story of, I went on my honeymoon and I tried to ride the helicopter and they made me buy a second seat. And that was the moment I knew that I needed to do something. He's been on the platform. He had been on the platform for a year. He gets to the end of that year. He sends me a text that is, hey, I wanted to let you know I'm back in Hawaii. I only needed one seat.
That's fantastic.
Right. So that's what we're here for. Those are the stories that make this all work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the headlines kind of make it about, you know, a magic pill or weight loss, but it is about life's changing, right? That's really what it is. I mean, maybe that sounds a little quirky, but it is. I was reading, and I hate to admit this, I was reading the AARP bulletin. This is about my age, and the reason was 2 out of 3 aged between 45 and 64, 2 out of 3 people are either diabetic or have the tendencies to get there. 2 out of 3 people. That's scary. I mean, if you think about that, I mean, that's a holistic problem. And those are what you think about 65, like you said, people are going to retire and not be able to enjoy it. And that cost is going to add up. It's terrifying, in my opinion, what we've done to ourselves. And I think health is an interesting problem because you can't go in the grocery store and find healthy options. I mean, you can, but you have to be deliberate about finding healthy options. And we've got, so this industry is just feeding us this information about just, hey, there's a quick snack, here's this, and it's full of, you know, preservatives and chemicals, or it's full of just fillers so they can stay on the shelf longer and stuff like that. I mean, it's really hard for people to, and I think what I really like about what you're doing is you're clearing the headspace for people to make those lifestyle changes. And so we'll get to,
I mean, I know it's nothing related to us and what but like, I don't know if you've seen the Heinz comparison of like what was in the Heinz bottle in the 50s and what's in the Heinz bottle today, right? And it was like tomato, water, salt. And now it's 75 chemicals that we can't pronounce, right? Exactly. And it's just, you know, like we're like, well, you know, your parents are saying, this is what I ate when I was a kid. And you're going, this is not, it has the same brand name. This is not the same food infrastructure for sure.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about the state of the market today. I mean, there's still a lot of noise that, you know, you see ads for the name brands, I think, on TV, but you know, unfortunately, either your insurance plan doesn't cover it or it's still very expensive. And I think employers are struggling with, do they cover it? Do they not? Employees are confused. What's the general state of the market these days?
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you start from the beginning, the reason that compounding, you know, got attention was that in the US, when a medication is on the FDA shortage list, compound pharmacies can step in and create that medication to supply doctors, right? Like the patent that those brands have doesn't override the medical necessity to be able to give those prescriptions to patients. That shortage was resolved in, you know, the first quarter of last year. And you know, the shift in focus is not that we are creating copies anymore. It's that I'm going to align a tirzepatide or a semaglutide shot, Michael, that is tailored to you, right? So it's personalized based on your health assessment maybe you need more focus on muscle retention, or you need more focus on, anti-nausea or energy levels because your energy drops when you're on a tirzepatide, right? So the personalization of these medications is what doctors are prescribing, not the branded, because it only comes in one format. It doesn't have any of those additional benefits if you add in other things that help support those other areas that I just referenced. So that's the shift in the marketplace, and Eli still and Novo still upset about that, right? They filed a number of lawsuits around compounding and personalization last year. And over the summer, what the courts decided was that Eli and Novo didn't have standing to even file those lawsuits, right? So they were all dismissed outright. So the state of the market currently is there is a lot of, commercially available product at your pharmacy from time to time, right? I mean, even this month I was in Publix and just, hey, you guys have, the 7.5, milligram dose of Mounjaro. And she goes, no, we get a shipment in about every Sunday and it's gone Sunday night.
Yeah.
So even though it's resolved from shortage, it's still not
it's not
available every day, right? So this is going to continue. I think that the other state of the market here, and what I think we're seeing happen on the GLP-1 side, is you're going to see prices come down, right? Like, I think the administration has done a good job of kind of pressing that price dialogue. I think the markets are looking at that, and they're coming out with a 149 pill. I think that will continue to bring the price down, and that's only going to raise the number of people that are getting the benefit of this medication, which is good for everyone. But what I think it really drives, like the longer tail that comes out of that, is the population that has spent most of their adult life obese and feeling terrible is now in a place where they feel great, where they feel better than they ever have. And if they're anything like me, the next question that I asked is, what's next? Right? Like, so I feel good here, like, oh, but my hormones are out of whack and I need to be on testosterone because I've been overweight for the last 20 years, right? Or there's other medications out there, NAD+, Somorelin, things that are FDA approved that just, they kind of stack on top of these GLP-1s and they make you feel superhuman, right? I've got everybody in my life on NAD+ now. It is a chemical that also kind of winds its way down out of your body as you age. And the reality of it is, like, I feel 20 years younger. My dad, is 70 and he's climbing ladders and getting on the roof and cleaning gutters, and he, calls himself super grandpa now. So I think it's creating this mental shift for all of us where we want to be more proactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You look at the blood work companies and they're collecting 100 biomarkers and they're selling hundreds of thousands. And this is a population of people that bypass the doctor because they want to be proactive about their health.
Right.
And that's the shift that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, and that's exciting. I think more data about how to be healthy and how it affects you every day. What's your choices? What does a choice do to your downstream, biomarkers or whatever? It's interesting. So let's talk about the weight loss for a minute, and really the habits you mentioned. And what struck me when I first was introduced to your company is you had partners like nutrition partners and behavioral health and other things. So let's talk about the habit architecture around somebody that gets on GLP-1, what they should expect, and maybe what they need to think about changing.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just general habit creation, right? Don't create 17 new habits the day you start a GLP-1 and expect any of them to be successful, right? Yeah. Pick one or two and get those and do the mental training so that they actually become habits. And the really easy ones, the number one thing that is happening to folks when they start GLP-1s is they're not getting enough protein and they're not getting enough water. Full stop. You read about the gut problems. Most of the problems come from the muscle mass problems. They come from those two issues, right? You've got to prioritize water. You got to prioritize protein. That's your first 3-month habit, right? Coming out of that, you've got to, there is all the other things, right? Now you can get up and go for more walks. You should start to adjust. How am I snacking? What am I doing from an activity perspective? And then I think a serious one, and one that, we partnered with BetterHelp to execute, is the mental health side of this. Right. A lot of eating is related to something going on, your anxiety, your stress, so there's a huge mental component here that I think gets downplayed and needs more attention.
Yeah, I think so too. I think people build habits over years that they don't realize is a habit. And that, like I said earlier, the GLP-1s, at least for me, gave me a little bit of headspace that I wasn't thinking about the next meal. I was thinking about, hey, it's a beautiful afternoon. I'm going to go out for a walk, or whatever the circumstance was. But just sometimes when we're trying to change our lifestyle, it's really what we're telling ourselves, and sometimes we don't even, the subconscious is telling us, because we've just been doing it over and over and over. That's why it became a habit. And I think that clarity is there. I think you use behavior, belief, and belonging. I've kind of talked about movement, meditation, and moderation, right? So it's the same thing. If you can think about those lifestyle changes. And I think that's one of the interesting things about your community on Facebook. I spent some time there this week and have before anyway, but it just the stories and the support about, hey, you're going through this. I did this. I tried this and it worked, and it was about, because what you hear in the news is really, oh, they're just trying to get a magic weight loss pill. But when you look in those communities, there's people helping each other, and there's amazing results. Like you said, I mean, some people say they lost, X amount of weight last year, and it's incredible how they're trying to lift each other up. And I think we should all be doing that. Yeah.
No, I think it's a little disheartening when some people call it the easy button or want to downplay that effect, right? Like, at the end of the day, like even if you're going to the gym all the time, like we're making improvements to that equipment so that it is more efficient and better for us, right? Yeah. We're not all still just doing push-ups and lifting rocks off the ground, right? So I don't understand why advancements in medication, in nutrition, in fitness can't all be looked at the same way, right? They are supporting cast members to help us have better lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's go back to when you started taking it after all your research and everything. Were there one or two habits that you said this is a must? Maybe you already talked about water and protein, but you were learning that on your own journey. Anything you changed drastically?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest shift that I made when I first got started was I went from a little bit more strength training to being a little bit more cardio, right? So a little bit more running, a little bit more walking, like that kind of activity, hand in hand with the water and the protein. I think as you look out longer, now it's just order less food, right? Like make smaller portions now when we're doing, you spend the first year on these meds and you make dinner and everybody eats, and then you put the leftovers in the fridge, and now you've got so many, you're throwing them away in 2 days, 3 days later, right? Yeah. So when I go out with my partner, she and I will mostly split meals now, right? Like there's just, there's not as much consumption happening, right? Your alcohol intake goes down. So that's a habit that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people are also thinking about, right? Like, especially in dry January, right? We're all like, we should quit. We know it's terrible for us, but it's a social lubricant that we continue to indulge, right? GLP-1s kind of naturally help you solve some of that habit too, because it doesn't feel good, right? So it does have kind of a natural help on a number of habit steps.
Yeah. You just hit something. It was in 23, I decided to quit drinking. I was talking to my physician about it, and I said, "Is there anything that you would recommend I do?" She said, "Well, semaglutide will reduce your cravings. If you want to do it, I'll prescribe you a month or 2 months." And so I did, and she was right. And it's just it just helps you get started. It's not changing that much, other than just giving you a mental boost to get there, right? And so I haven't had a drink since. And then of course,
congrats.
Like you said, yeah, and you're right. A lot of people are thinking about drinking less, eating less, and I think I'm really pleased to start seeing there's more and more stuff about the food that we're eating is not healthy. And maybe people probably are unhappy with Robert Kennedy, but he's there and he's pushing that journey, and it's real. There's so much stuff that we eat and that become a habit that we just don't need to be doing, right? And or replace it with something positive. So let's talk about some other success stories. You've got, like I said, in your Facebook community, there's some amazing success stories, and it's really fun to read. I think it is, just because I've seen people tackle something they've wanted to do and they're doing it. But do you have anyone story that sticks out in your mind? I mean, helicopter was a good one.
Yeah, no, I mean, we did an event middle of last year where we brought together a small group of about 15 of our customers, partners, and some of the people would get up and tell stories of 130 pounds, right? And they would do before and after pictures and kind of the impact that has had on their mental health, their relationships, the way that they can engage with their kids. And it's interesting because I think we focus on the really big losers, right? Like the folks that have lost a ton of weight and have made these huge transformations. But even 20 pounds off of a 55-year-old's knees is super, super relevant, right? To longevity and being able to maintain, enjoying that second half of life, which we're so passionate about. So, I think some of the stories their personal accountability stories. There's, funny stories around like, oh, I did this and then had this kind of outcome. And, I think it is interesting to me when how raw some people will get in the community, right? Around what they're experiencing or how the meds impacted their intimate life, their, everything, right? Like they're sharing these things. You're like, that's really private and personal. Thank you for, sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys invited me to do a webinar with you guys like last October. I really had so much fun doing it because the participants were active and asking questions. And one particular story that kind of got me was one lady said, well, I don't like to walk. And she did it in the chat. And I said, okay, if you don't like to walk, maybe just do leg lifts from, a chair or something like that. And then we went on to another question. And then the next time she wrote, she said, I'm going to start walking. So it was just kind of that kind of thing. They're telling themselves what they've learned they can't do. And now they're realizing that they can go do those things. Right. Yeah. And that's amazing. And you were telling me when we talked beforehand that GLP-1s are now finding new homes for other things. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's amazing is the research that continues to come out on like alternative outcomes, right? So the most recent one was a couple of days ago. GLP-1s are dramatically improving fertility rates, right? There are studies around, dementia and Alzheimer's, and you can dig around and maybe that's diabetes type 3, right? Because they're saying that your insulin management is so heavily influencing your brain's health as you continue to age, right? So GLP-1s are helping on that front. There's studies around rheumatoid arthritis, right? And then I think you get into the long tail of what obesity includes, right? So now GLP-1s are getting prescribed for sleep apnea, which is primarily an obesity problem, but it's a line that they've included that allows some people to use a GLP-1 through an insurance plan because maybe they will cover a sleep apnea, but they won't cover weight loss, right? So these alternative indications are starting to create alternative ways for insurance to be leveraged where they were banning the utilization of insurance on the weight loss category, which is huge for consumers, right? The more of those that we open up, the better off we are.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. Well, where do you see the market going? I mean, I think the employer market is interesting because, they're trying to do the best they can for their employees, but it drives cost up and things like this. Yeah. Do you see anything helping in the employer insurance type programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky problem for insurance in general, right? Yeah. So I think in a non-data based way, we can all say weight loss is good, right? Like it creates less insurance issues, right? It creates less medical events. As a category, insurance should say we should be covering this because the long-term effect is great. Yeah. The reality is that we think quarter to quarter because they're all publicly traded and they have the data that says Michael will be an employee for XYZ Corporation for 2.6 years. Yeah. So by the time we're finished covering Michael's weight loss meds, he's moving on to a different company, which might be a different insurance plan. And that new insurance plan gets the benefit of Michael's reduced healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
So until all of them go, none of them go, right? Which is wild, right? So it's like, where's the cabal that's going to come together and say, we all got to go do this so that 3 years from now, our healthcare costs are dramatically decreased. But and then there's the more nefarious side that says, insurance companies do better when we're all sick.
Yeah.
Because when they have an adverse year of claims, they get to go raise premiums 40% on everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not in their best interest to insure things that actually operate in a proactive health improvement way, right? Which is why, right? Like the incentive, I think as I've dug into this, right, the incentive structure is so broken, right? And what I think, my brother is a doctor, and 2 years ago when we were doing this, he goes, Chris, that's where, telemedicine is where doctors go to die. I'm not going to join you on this journey. Right? Like that's the end of their career, not a thing that they want to go do. He joined us as chief medical officer in December because the mindset is shifted from, I don't want to be in the system that is continuing to perpetuate the disease, chronic pain problem and not proactively solving healthcare. And where this category is going, great, we started with GLP-1s, but where this category is going is a proactive healthcare model that allows the consumer to choose their own adventure.
Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit. I love that story about your brother, though, because I personally, if I can get telemedicine, that's where I want to go because I don't have to sit in the lobby. I don't have, it's
on time.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about the future of what you're doing. I know you've talked about personalized medicine and some other things. Why don't you tell us where the journey's going?
I mean, I look at what we've done around the GLP-1 category and the opportunities that's presented us as we take a look back at the overall category, and where I think we are going, where I know where we're going. We've got to move from this healthcare model to what I'm calling a self-care model, right? So, Michael, you should be choosing to be proactive with your health. Your health should be personalized to you based on a tonnage of data that no doctor can consume, right? The gigantic biomarkers, your DNA report, your gut biome, the points of data coming off every health tech device in your house, your scale, your Oura ring, your continuous glucose monitor. Like, no doctor can consume all of that on a daily basis and go, Michael, you need to think about this, right? But the evolution of technology is allowing us to pipe all of that data into an intelligent system that then, looks across 100,000 patients and says, well, these three need to do something different because based on this data, there's a problem. Right. And that alerts the doctor, and the doctor can be proactive there. Right. So this idea of self-care, right, is we should be responsible for our health. Right. Yeah. The provider should be a guide, not a gatekeeper. Right. The number of women that have been turned away for the last 2 decades from testosterone, right, because of a black box label warning that turned out to be untrue is sad. Right. That's 2 generations of women that had horrible hormone balance. Right. So I believe in this self-care model. Right. And I think there's a future where, Orderly as a platform will be everything other than heads in beds and surgical, right? So we should have the infrastructure. We've started opening clinics in Atlanta, right? Oh, wow. So we've got 2 physical clinics where you can go in now and meet with a provider and have a more holistic, functional conversation, not just a weight loss conversation. And we're going to bring those findings into our digital experience and expand the number of clinic footprints that we have across the country. In the next 3 years, I would think that we look like a shadow healthcare system that has major operations in every metro zip code, has the digital infrastructure to provide you with any type of specialty consultation that you need, is partnered with the pharmacies all across the country to deliver those medications as may be needed. I think it's a new type of model that's emerging. Right? How do we become a self-care system instead of a healthcare system?
Yeah, and you said something earlier. I think you said the provider should be a guide instead of a gatekeeper, and I think that's what you're explaining, or how I'm hearing it is that, hey, let's come in and see what's best for you and what fits your lifestyle and all that stuff, and that's amazing. I think that's where we have to go as a population, and it's hard to. I think you mentioned, there's these rigid systems that have been in place, and there's actuaries that say we can do this or we won't do this. And that doesn't have anything to do with the patient, right? It has to do with the numbers, right? So it's an interesting thing. It's great. And you talked about like gut biome and B12 and stuff like that, or I saw that on your website maybe. Mm-hmm. How does that interact with GLPs?
I mean, if you think about the gut biome side of things, right? Gut biome is being linked to your mental health. Gut biome is being linked to how your skin, right? Like there's a lot, so there's a lot happening in the gut that I think we are still trying to understand. Right. If you think about the way that a GLP-1 works, is that it dramatically slows down your overall gut. Right. I don't think we've seen any longitudinal studies around what that is doing to your gut biome. Right. Yeah. So that's things that we're investing in. How do we do more of, if we can do gut biome testing across our patients from start to 6 months later to 12 months later, we can start to be the group that understands the impact that that's having. And then, oh, by the way, at months, between month 5 and 7 is when you start to see the biggest impact to your gut biome. Here's the probiotic that you need so that you can maintain great mental clarity and great skin, right? Like those are the things that we're looking for to improve the outcomes that GLP-1s create.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Being a colon cancer survivor, I that gut biome thing is something I try to learn about. And, it's interesting to me. I've tried all the probiotics and nothing really, I didn't notice anything. And I just started using one spore-based probiotic, and I actually feel a difference. And if the science is right, it's because it moves through your system and gets to your intestines before the acids break it down and stuff like that. So I think that's a great area for you guys. I'm really excited about that kind of research and where that kind of goes as well. So we did get somebody on LinkedIn did say, well, this is really interesting conversation. Thank you, Chris. So that's good. We didn't get any questions though. That's unfortunate. But so let's talk about you for a minute. So what is a habit that is non-negotiable for Chris Spears every day?
Every day, hugging the kids before they go to school.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's awesome. Last week, the guest said make their kids breakfast every morning so they could just
Yeah.
spend some time. That's awesome. That is awesome. That's an interesting trend for two men said the same thing or same area.
Yep.
So anything else you want to share with us about Orderly? How do people find you?
Yeah, I mean, orderlymeds.com. You can hunt me down on LinkedIn. I'm available for conversations, or you take a look at the platform if you need support on this journey.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that you do have partners in the community that offer nutritional services, behavioral health.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fantastic linkage to the lifestyle changes. And there was, I think I'm missing one more, fitness, right? There was a fitness.
Yeah. So part of being an Orderly customer is, access to better help, a fitness professional, and nutritional teams that can help you with understanding what's right for you.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's a great topic, and I hope you'll come back and talk with us again soon as things evolve. But for everybody, do check out OrderlyMeds.com, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and share it with a friend. So thank you very much for joining the Habit Architect.